On July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 touched down on the lunar surface, and mankind did finally land on the moon. Yet, despite this well-established scientific and historical fact, conspiracy theories have continued to this day. I'm Brian F. Comedy Jr. This is Brianing Line, the show where we discuss the hot-button issue of the day with 5 sub-points. Point 1. The lunar landing was not a hoax. I don't have time to go into debunking all the... well, I mean, you could fill books with the evidence debunking the hoax theories, and many has. I'll appeal to Occam's razor and point out that the sheer magnitude of such a hoax, the personnel, the engineers, the scientists, military, everyone at NASA, the astronauts themselves, to keep silent about it, to perpetrate that fraud on the American people would actually be more complicated, harder to pull off than landing on the moon. So there's something to consider that. Then there's also the aftermath I'm interested in discussing. One of the most inane arguments I've heard up against the fact that we actually did land on the moon is that we never went back, which is a puzzling statement, as we did. The conceit of this argument would be, well, if we could go to the moon once, why couldn't we do it again? And the rejoinder to that would be, well, we did. There was Apollo 12, there was Apollo 14, there was Apollo 15, there was Apollo 16, and there was Apollo 17. Now, obviously, the skeptic would say that, oh, well, hoax did the first time, why not 5 other times? Well, I would say, then, why 5 other times? Why risk the exposure? Certainly, hadn't it been proven that mankind has landed on the moon, the America has won the space race. And that's another factor, too, is that the Soviet Union, admittedly begrudgingly, backed off of the space race. They stopped trying to go to the moon because they accepted the fact that we did. Point 3, and this is more for my own personal amusement than anything else, is the idea that the moon landing was faked by none other than Stanley Kubrick, of all people, of course the director of 2001 Space Odyssey. I actually got a chance to meet Keir Dullea, of course the star, Dave Bowman, of that said movie. Last October, at Stanley's Kamikaze, I asked the actor point blank, you can be honest with me, did Kubrick fake the moon landing? He just laughed and said, no way, he wouldn't have had time. I did find it amusing that the argument against Kubrick having a role in this shady conspiracy was that he simply would have been too preoccupied with pre-production on A Clockwork Orange rather than the fact that it's on its face absurd. It was Tacitus who said, if you know who controls, you know who you may not criticize. And having a contrarian streak myself, at least in the past, I believe this is a big part of the motivation in underlining conspiracy theories such as the moon landing and other ones, be they JFK's assassination, we'll get to that in a moment, or the September 11th terrorist attacks. I think the inclination of many of these conspiracy theorists is that if you don't approve of the administration's actions, you cannot and will not believe the administration's official story. I think this a fallacious notion. I think it's a straw man. I think one can acknowledge that September 11th attacks were a coordinated effort by Al-Qaeda without approving of everything done in the name of the war on terror. About Kennedy's assassination, and I'll quote a great man who said, I think it's about as clearly established that Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy as that John Wilkes Booth killed Lincoln. But seeing it all again, you can use a little agnostic curiosity on that morbid episode. it for a year or two. It is always exciting to read about the assassination of Julius Caesar, particularly when the tale is told by the greatest tale-teller in dramatic literature. Never mind that we know that Brutus did it. It goes that way also for JFK. I think that it's interesting because for those who deny the moon landing yet idealize Kennedy himself, that they should think that his goal was unattainable or not attained, at any rate. This is also a straw man to say, oh, well, I was under Nixon's administration. You know you can't trust that guy. It was Kennedy who famously said in we choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skill. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are willing to postpone, and one which we intend to win, and the others do. And that's a goal we did reach, and if you do respect Kennedy's dream, you should then accept the scientifically and historically established fact that it was realized. And Kennedy had this goal. He set off the United States. I think that we defer to his legacy, we acknowledge that it was realized. And I'll also quote, as it pertains to our own future, Kennedy's speech from the 1960 Democratic National Convention, the New Frontier speech. The pioneers gave up their safety, their comfort, and sometimes their lives to build our new West. They were determined to make the new world strong and free, an example to the world. Some would say that those struggles are all over, that all the horizons have been explored, that all the battles have been won. There is no longer an American frontier. Or we stand today on the edge of a new frontier, the frontier of unknown opportunities and perils. Beyond that frontier are uncharted areas of science, unsolved problems of peace and war, unconquered pockets of ignorance and prejudice. I'm asking each of you to be pioneers towards that new frontier. My call is to the young in heart, regardless of age. Can we carry through in an age where we will witness not only new breakthroughs in weapons of destruction, but also a race for mastery of the sky and the rain, the ocean and the tides, the far side of space, and the inside of man's minds. And we cannot fail that trust, and we cannot fail to try. Stirring. We did not fail to trust, we did not fail to try, and we did not fail to get to the moon. And I think this applies to the future. I think we can and should and will get to that red planet, Mars. I hope that despite a small but vocal minority who will undoubtedly shout their conspiracy theories and doubts till the end of time, that mankind, Americans, and the whole human race will not stop daring to slip the sully bonds of earth, trod the unpassed trespass sanctity of space, put out our hands, and touch the face of God. I'm Brian F. Comedy Jr. This has been Brianing Line. Good night, and God bless.